Welcome back to the channel. Please leave a comment and help in improving the channel. Your help is appreciated greatly. Written in our slash stories by Unbannable. In 2019, my extremely weird roommate K ed himself, and I never really processed it. So now I'm sharing the story with strangers on the internet. I first met Chase, or Michael, depending on who you ask, in 2019 when I moved into a falling apart house in Tempe, Arizona. It was the worst house I've ever lived in up until that point. The roof tiles crumbled off the sides like milk-soaked Oreos, and the smell of the nearby canal wafted up every pipe whenever you flush the toilet or rinse your dishes in the sink. Whenever I pass it now, I remember what happened there and how the night shifted from scene to scene like a bad stage play and how the tin of cop lights flitted in the vestibule, how the next day's twilight was calm and calm, almost like reality finally became itself. And the world existed on and on for you and me and everyone who didn't die. I met my two new roommates sometime in the early afternoon. Marty, an early 30-something who looked a bit like a miniature Schnauzer version of Ed Kemper, and Chase, who shared Marty's mustache and glasses, and looked similar to Marty, except slightly taller and with the typical skinny fat millennial physique that seems so fashionable these days. Marty decided on wearing standard human attire, so stock I don't recall it. Chase decided on whitey tighties and a plain white t-shirt and socks with puke green sandals. Now, that's an outfit you remember. Although I mostly remember it because it's all I ever saw him wear for the next few months. When I introduced myself to Marty, he shot me a goofy smile and said, "Hi, I'm Marty," a remarkably familiar human greeting. When I introduced myself to Chase, I said, "Hey man, how's it going?" And he did not say anything back and just stared at me like I was an idiot for trying to introduce myself to my new roommates. I assumed he was thinking, why would you even say hi to anybody ever? You should just stare at them blankly like you're being possessed by a ghost or dissociating on DXM. I was now living with two mustached men in the ghetto of Tempe, Arizona, only one of whom seemed tangibly lifelike. You have never been subjected to a fate this cruel. Over the next few months, I tried to adjust to the new situation. I got an all-right job. I had a couple of pseudo-girlfriends. Let's call them Banana and Idney. I became passable acquaintances with Marty. We liked shit-talking our landlord who was some fake chic son or nephew. We didn't know. All we knew is he was in his mid-20s and a bit of a Ponzi cunt, and he owned multiple houses somehow. I woke up every day cursing God for not being born the son of some Saudi Arabian oil tyrant. I only ever saw Chase in glimpses. He'd stand in the backyard or driveway in his aforementioned attire and smoke a cigarette, ogling the street. He only ever looked forward. He did not move when he smoked except to put the cigarette to his lips and to exhale. He looked straight ahead, and only straight ahead, and didn't move, like the external world couldn't or didn't affect him. In these moments, he seemed to be an acausal phantom. Profoundly bizarre, it unsettled me more than anything in recent memory. I'd come home and he'd be smoking, and he'd be fixedly glaring forward to the street, and there was never any deviance to this, not even a brief alteration. He never stamped out his cigarettes. He didn't throw them. He let them fall from his hand, as if he was never smoking in the first place, then just let them smolder there in the backyard gravel. I tried talking to him many times, and it was always the same response. That is, there was never a response, or even the beginnings of one, not a wiggle or a whimper. There was Chase looking at me like I was an exhibit at a museum, or maybe thinking I was some schizoid affectation of his own consciousness. I don't know. I will never know. A few weeks into this, I asked Marty what was up. Marty had no idea. He just said that Chase never spoke to anybody. He said he had never had a single conversation with Chase, and whenever he tried, Chase just peered at him. Marty had never even heard him speaking on the phone, despite living with him for a year. I asked the landlord what was up. The landlord said that Chase seemed perfectly normal when he began renting the room, and that nothing was the matter. Maybe he just doesn't like you guys, he told us. Maybe you're being too loud with your girlfriends, he told me. I asked if Chase was developmentally challenged, and the landlord resoundingly said absolutely not. Whenever I brought over Idney or Banana, Chase would grunt, guttily grunt, warthogishly grunt. This was the only living, earthly communication he ever attempted with me. We'd walk into the kitchen, where he would be seated eating Kix or Pops, one of the corn-hued globule cereals, and he would immediately grunt in dissatisfaction at us and storm off to his bedroom, which was only 3 or so feet away and attached to the kitchen. There were a couple of occasions where he looked over at Banana and shook his head. She told me this made her feel uncomfortable, and I told her, I don't know what to tell you, babe. At night, sometimes he'd leave his door open and he'd be sat at his quadruple monitors, basked in their eternal blue glow, typing maniacally and sweating thick, noticeable from a great distance droplets from his throat, and every now and then, rarely, but sometimes laughing with purpose, with actual human-esque joy, like he meant it, like he really wanted to be doing it like everyone else does. One night, after a round of the OL Italian opera with Idney, there was a bang on my door. We both bolted up to dress ourselves, and I opened the door. When I opened it, no one was there. I went to Marty's room and asked him if I was being too loud. He said, I didn't hear anything. So I went to Chase's room and banged on his door, and he did not answer. Through the door, I said something like, "Hey man, if you have any issues with me or if I'm being too loud, we can talk about it. I'll keep it down from now on. I apologize if I disturb you." A couple of weeks later, after a nightcap with Idney, who left dissatisfied as usual, I went to sleep thinking about how awesome I am and about how great I was finally doing Despite my unfortunate living situation, I drifted to slumbering bliss on a canoe to dreamland. And on this canoe, I heard a loud bang. I did not register it. It sounded like someone dropping a box of tools in their garage, or maybe it was just fireworks outside. I did not care or know or care to know. And then there were many louder bangs and many more louder ones, and these bangs were Marty knocking on my door. I opened it and he said, "I think Chase just killed himself." And I said, "What?" And he said there was a loud bang from his room. His door is locked. Marty and I both bum rushed Chase's door. When the door opened, Chase was laying with his head sideways in an empty suitcase, shirtless, whitey-tighties, a faucet of blood slapping and growing on a felt liner, and he groaned horribly, unearthly moans that sounded as if he was trying to will himself back to life. They sounded like regret and immediacy, and they went on echoing the house for 5 to 10 minutes until the paramedics removed him. Marty called 911 right away. I just stared in disbelief. We were told later that he did not die on the ride to the hospital, but died at the hospital, age 26, and so I can only assume he groaned the whole way there, and in some callous, fucked up way. These groans were the most communication I ever had with Chase, one way or another. He shot himself through the temple with a 9mm Glock. Chase was not thinking of where he was pointing the gun. If he had consulted me prior, I would have told him to shoot himself in the roof of his mouth, as the bullet has the best chance of hitting your brain stem and killing you instantly. Or I would have said something facile and placid like, "Suicide is not the answer. Don't do it, man." Chase's death was my first true introduction to violence and death and finite realities. Now, when I see some poor coyote flattened on the asphalt or a dead fish in an aquarium, I see Chase dying with his head draining into a suitcase, emitting sounds so pitch-sad and terrible they never leave the slivers they filled. They are a part of that room, that house, the tributaries of poorly caulked wall. They are a part of my pathways, and as much as I wanted them gone, I saved them being around, if only to appreciate the mistakes I've not made yet, the footsteps I feel compelled to follow on days when my defeat can be eaten from the ethers. Marty and I were separated and interrogated by the police. I couldn't much talk. I said the initial bang didn't sound like a gunshot, and it didn't. I said I just ignored it and fell back asleep until Marty woke me up. They concluded a suicide in less than an hour. I called Banana to pick me up, as I didn't want to stay at the house anymore, and she did, and I love her for this forever. We went back to her place, and I smoked an entire pack of her yellow American spirits. She tried to calm me down. She gave me some vegan pizza. She was saving for lunch the next day. "I think you need it more than I do, given the circumstances," she said. She laid next to me and hugged me, and I almost cried but didn't. I realized I would have mostly been crying at the shock of it all, not at the situation itself. I did not know Chase or even like Chase, and he certainly didn't like me. Chase was alien. Chase was a foreign spy. Chase was an inhuman bourgeoisie. Chase was an apparition who did not exist within the realm of cause and effect, the determined lines of reality like the rest of us do. What would I have cried over? He did not even acknowledge I existed, except for when he banged on my door or shook his head in disgust at my half-girlfriend. The next day, Chase's uncle came over, and I gave him my condolences. His uncle did not seem sad. He seemed hurried, rushed, annoyed at the inconvenience of his dead nephew. I asked him if he noticed Chase behaving strangely recently, and the uncle said, "Chase? His name is Michael." And I said, "The landlord told us his name is Chase." And the uncle said, "Chase is his middle name." And I said, "Okay, so has Michael been acting strangely?" And he said, No, of course not. "Do you want his computer monitors?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, we're just going to throw this stuff away. Do you want to buy some stuff in his room?" And I said, "You want me to buy his computer?" And he said, "Well, it's just going to trash if you don't want it. I'll let you guys look through it and sort out amongst yourselves if you want anything." And I said, "I don't think I want his stuff. I think you should have his stuff or his mom." And he said, "His mother's on vacation right now and she wouldn't answer phone." I stayed with Banana a couple days, but couldn't find a new place, and so reluctantly went back to the house. The landlord was ripping up the tile in the kitchen and replacing it. He told me no one can know about this because it would significantly devalue the house. A couple days later, Banana came over, and she excitedly told me we owe it to ourselves to inspect Chase's room and his stuff. "Computers aren't cheap," she said. "Perfectly good monitors," she said. So despite my reservations, we did. And on his desk, we found post-it notes and notebooks full of some esoteric math scribbles neither of us could understand, cryptography and set theory we think, but neither of us were sure. In his closet, we found 3 9mm pistols and a brand new AR, 15 and thousands of 5.56 rounds. The boxes stacked up to about the height of my chest. Without hesitating, Banana said, maybe this was all for the best. And to this day, I'm not sure. I'm not sure Chase should have done this, or why he had an AR-15 with a fuck ton of ammo, or why he didn't act like a human being. I don't know if anything I did ever affected him one way or another, if he hated me, or if he knew I existed. I don't know if my half-girlfriends destroyed something in him. I don't know if he was planning to kill me and Marty and my girlfriends or other people, even though he sure seemed the type. And then if he was planning that, should I be glad he's dead? Should I not feel anything? Should I consider this a bullet dodged? Should I think Chase killing himself was actually his humanity bubbling forth, calling out to itself, stopping whatever strange dark beacon was signaling his head? Did he make the right call? Did he, after whatever dispossessed strange life he led, that led him to these thoughts and these moments, genuinely free himself? I don't know. I will never know. I haven't seen Banana or Idney or Marty in 4 years. I think about Chase every now and then when I pass the house. I think about how he used to drink milk straight from the jug. I think about the way his glasses used to fog up when he was laughing at the computer monitors in his room. I think about the way he'd stare out at the road standing there hunchbacked in his whitey-tighties, knowing we didn't and couldn't know what he knew,